Kurukshetra, and then we spoke about the different types of Hindus, what they do, what is their outlook, how do they try to give their little contribution in this Kurukshetra. Now it's time to look at concrete replies to the problems we had discussed.
We identified the problem. The second, we talked about the individual and how the individual should respond to it. And in the third edition, we'll be talking about the institutional framework and the institutional strategies that are required, and what specifically Indic Academy and Indic Book Club are trying to do in this aspect. First, we'll deal with the Indic Book Club, and then we'll talk about Indic Academy. So Indic, with the editorial board, an advisory board, and a organization structure that will have a president, vice president, secretary, treasurer, and executive directors for various functional roles. So that's the organization structure of Indic Book Club. It would be registered as a society, and it would be on the lines of a Roundtable India organization or a Rotary Club, where you would have periodically you would have local chapters, you'll have campus chapters, and it would be a sort of a global network. So when I say a public intellectual, I'm talking about any intellectual who is expressing his opinion on the social media, be it the Twitter or be it Facebook, or in any other platform, wherein he has a view. Non-humanities background intellectuals, otherwise known as internet Hindus or right-wing, this is the target, and the idea is to transform such intellectuals from being a social media activist all the way up to becoming a scholar. And the process that we are trying to lay down on how we can transform them is what I'm going to talk about in this edition. So let's just look at what the mission of Indic Book Club is. Indic Book Club seeks to bring a renaissance by nurturing a network of public intellectuals. We are nurturing network. So that's the key. There's a network. And there's an enabling action of seeking to transform their answers and then work together. So, so anything that we do is looking at it in three buckets. Is it an own initiative? Is it a joint initiative? Or is it supporting somebody else's initiative? So there's no issue there. Now we look at the promotions. Just like you have the films, a large part of film industry now, it's less about production, but almost 30% of their budget is on marketing, right? So we are living in a world which has got too many things vying for your attention. And what as a consequence of that is, if you've written a great book, but if you want to penetrate and reach out to the audience, you need to spend a lot of time on promotions. And we have seen how Amish does that in a very creative and engaging way. So when we look at this promotions, what we are looking at is different types of areas in which we can promote an unknown author and make him visible. So one is, of course, we have a Facebook and a Twitter page on which we just announce and feature a book and then promote that on Facebook. And then we get a celebrity is to endorse that book. We run excerpts on various platforms. We run reviews and interviews. Then, of course, what the kind of podcast that you're doing is phenomenal, and the impact that it has on the authors when they engage with you on the various podcasts that you've done. Again, that's something is a very important platform. And now there are others also who are doing this podcast. So we trying to promote these podcasts on our Facebook page. We have a weekly product called Indic Chat, which Dimple manages and promotes that. And that is a very successful product. Now we have done more than 35 podcasts in the last 1.5 years. And it's a weekly podcast, so we announce it, and it's a 1 hour podcast on either on Zoom or FB, and then we market that video post also. The other two things are the talks and book launches, and these two are very important. We have now done, yesterday we had a book launch in Bombay, and so therefore book launch as a product in terms of any author wanting to do book launch on a national footprint, on a global footprint, then IBC is emerging as a very important platform. I don't think so there's any other platform anywhere in the world that can offer this kind of a opportunity for authors to reach out. For example, now we have done Being Hindu. We have done 3 launches in New York. We have done it in Washington, and now we're doing it in Chicago. And then end of December, we're doing it in California. So like, and like I mentioned, Amish, we're doing it in 6 cities in February. In India, we had a series of book launches for Radhakrishna Pillai for his book on Chanakya, and young authors. I would call them like, it's like an arangetram. So we are also focusing on young authors. Like in Delhi, we had a series of book launches for young authors and encouraging them. So it's a joint invitation by the young author and IBC. So it makes them feel that it's their function, it's their idea, and they're presenting themselves to the audience, so they get a few copies that they can distribute as a part of the invitation to their family and to their friends or whomever they want to reach out to, and we invite somebody senior, and therefore this is transforming the young authors, because when you write a book, writing a book itself is a lonely process, and then you go through a process of rejections from publishers, and then finally some publishes it, or you go to self-publishing, and then you put it out there, and you're not sure. I mean, what's the response? How do you reach out? So when you create a platform for young authors to come and say, hey, we will do your book launch, and we will give you that platform, it transforms them to write more, to be more prolific, to be more, to study more and express themselves more. And that we have been doing successfully. So all in all, this promotion, when you look at promotions of authors, there are different ways. One is an online promotions, and one is offline physical meetings. And that's where this network comes in together. So, any publisher or any author. So when we look at authors, we categorize them into sort of 3 categories. So, established rock stars or established authors like Sanjeev or Amish or, Hindu, those kind of category. And then you have the sort of a mid-sized, may have written 2-3 books and not yet gained as much acceptance or recognition, and then the first time and upcoming authors. So if you look at them in 3 buckets, then you sort of know how to position this. So the younger authors obviously are the target that they should be encouraged, and they should get a platform. But we also target the established ones, because they also bring in, they add the reputation or the credibility to IBC, because they're also, if I did a talk with Amish in Coimbatore, there were 1,000 people out there, thanks to my friend Swati Rohit and Pramod, who's the local coordinator. There are 1,000 students out there. And Amish spoke. I mean, Amish is a brilliant speaker, and I'm sure he transformed at least 10 of them out there who are going to write a book and who are going to get inspired by Amish. So now Amish doesn't need IBC in that sense. He's already established, but he has helped us. And then, but we have given a platform wherein he got a huge audience, and then he has reached out, because that's what his Swadharma is, to reach out. And that's what he told me, that I want to transform young India. And I'm sure That one single talk in Coimbatore, more than 10 people have been transformed. So this is about promotions. The next stage would be, you write the book, it's sold, it's doing well. Then, of course, how do you present your case amongst your peers, which is what brings us to the literature festivals. One is obviously, of course, at some point in time, we have to establish our own literature festival. The other is that all the lit fests, somebody was telling me there are about 80 lit fests in India today. So in all the lit fests, you can, talk to them and sponsor members of IBC to be present there, sponsor it as a panel, or encourage them to say, hey, why don't you look at this theme of and look at these authors. But the larger goal eventually is to send our authors also to international literature festivals, and that is where we give a travel grant and then ensure that all the lit fests in the world, there's some representation of an author from the IBC stable, that because they're also looking for content. I mean, it's not like that they're doing as a favor, but it's just that there's no platform of communication between the curators of those lit fests and the authors here. So that is the role that we are trying to fill in. We have not yet started on this actively, but that's one of the goals. If you notice, Kushal, there is really no Booker, or there's no equivalent of awards in India for authors. So there's obviously there's a need, and there's an opportunity, there's a space there to establish a marquee brand for awards. Obviously, the marquiness comes from age, and after the credibility in the process is 10 years of it becomes a marquee brand. But at least you should have a vision saying that, look, there is no marquee brand for awards, and that's something which that needs to be considered. But we're also doing what we call as Grateful to Gurus, and that's a product, or that's a brand that we have, wherein we honor, it's like a lifetime achievement award. We honor academics who have struggled against leftist hegemony all their life, and survived, and have created exemplary work and a legacy, but have not been recognized for whatever reasons. And we want to see that all of them are, acknowledged and recognized. And we have done that in about, so far we have done about 8 such events in Pune, Delhi, Chennai, where traditionally we honor them, we give a citation, and we thank them for the what they've done for our dharma. And lastly, this is where the Indic Academy will come in the sense that once you are a public intellectual, you're 35 plus, you're a public intellectual, so you've transformed yourself, you're writing well, you're more interested, you're passionate, you're doing research, and then, hey, there's an opportunity for you to become actually a PhD on the side. And I can mention at least 5 people that we are working on right now, motivating them, encouraging them. One is my good friend from New Jersey, Dr. Aditi. She's not a doctor, sorry. I tease her that she should be a doctor. Aditi Banerjee. She's actually a lawyer, and she works in an insurance firm in New York. And so I'm constantly motivating her to become a PhD doctor. Like that, Nitin Sridhar, who is the editor for India Facts and Advaita Academy, he's a potential candidate. There's a friend of mine, Jijit Ravi, from Bangalore. He's another potential candidate to become a PhD. Srinivas Udumudi from Hyderabad, he's another potential candidate. So, I mean, this is just it's just the tip of the iceberg. There are several public intellectuals who have such immense knowledge and depth on, I mean, true Indology. I mean, he should become a PhD at some point in time. So there are several people like that. It's just we just need to understand, reach out to them, motivate them, encourage them, nurture them, tell them that look, that's the ultimate, that's their swadharma. They should look at becoming a doctor, and then the narrative will completely transform. The reason why we are focusing on this is that if you want to change the narrative, and by the time uh, you nurture it, a scholar from the traditional, and he becomes in the normal process, that's a 10-year process. But here, this is a ripe audience who are mature, who are 35 plus, who are mature, and who have the sufficient knowledge and the passion. And therefore, I would say in India right now, if we just announce this and then take it up, uh, we could get at least 10,000 people who would become scholars.
I had a question. Okay, so now we've kind of covered the entire spectrum of the Indic Book Club. Now, uh, as someone who actually reads a lot myself, I mean, I make it a point that I at least cover 40 books in a year. Now, what I try to do in my own personal journey, as someone who reads a lot and tries to contemplate a lot, is I actually try to read the other side. Now, why when I say the other side, is the side that opposes the point of view that I'm reading in that book. I'm not saying any ideologically opposed side or anything of that sort. Now, when we are in the process of reading or establishing or promoting authors, are we also making it a point that we don't suffer from the echo chamber effect, where what I see in a lot of left leaning organizations is, and I think that that problem is, kind of seeping into the other side. And in this case, the so-called right wing of India, is there is a lot of what we can call it the echo chamber effect, where there are 20 people who already agree on everything anyways, and then they come together and they start discussing it. So how does the Indic Book Club, and then obviously when we talk about the Indic Academy, so this is in relation to both the Indic Book Club and the Indic Academy, is there a conscious effort within the Indic Book Club and the Indic Academy to make sure that the members or the people who are participating in the process do not suffer from this cognitive dissonance of living in an echo chamber?
Well, Kushal, this is you raised a valid point, but I recognize that's that could become a problem. I don't see that as a problem as of there is a certain problem in certain areas, but there is only there's we have limited resources, and this is ultimately a platform for people to explore themselves, to become inquirers. I mean, and this is and set themselves upon a journey of inquiry. How they conduct themselves post that, uh, that would require a different. I mean, frankly speaking, IBC cannot have that kind of a DNA to police or to ensure, to rule, have rules. We just can't. We just want to be an enabler, just enable the transformation of public intellectuals into leaders of thought and expression. But beyond that, how their attitudes are and how they will, uh, they themselves could become dogmatic. They could themselves could have echo chambers. That's something which is really outside the brief of IBC and IA.
Fair enough. I was just trying to play the role of the Trojan horse in that. All right. Now I wanted to talk. I wanted
Yeah.
you to talk about Indic Academy, and I had a question. So, what made you actually, you know, now you've given the explanation of the Indic Book Club, but this is a very important question, जो actually मैं भूल गया आपको पूछने को. Why did you start this? What made you think about it? कि okay, and
So
why the name? क्यों सोचा आपने ये नाम कि इंडिक बुक क्लब या इंडिक एकेडमी? सो बिफोर यू स्टार्ट एक्सप्लेनिंग द इंडिक एकेडमी इन डिटेल, share a bit of the background as to why did you think of coming up with this name, and then you can take it forward and then talk about the Indic Academy in detail.
yeah, yeah, it's see, it's basically there is a lot of when we look at Indic Academy, you will understand why. when we look at civilizational, what really happened when we say Indic, what is the opposite of an Indic? The opposite of an Indic is somebody who is colonized, somebody who has been colonized. So that's the opposite of Indic. So what really happened as a result of our colonial experience is that we have been sort of the umbilical cord between us and our civilization has been cut, and consequent to that, our thinking is completely on a very submissive basis to the Western knowledge and the Western knowledge systems. That's the first thing. And then consequently, thanks to the post independent Marxist leftist hegemony in the education, we have also developed a contempt to our identity and to our knowledge. So that's what's happened. So one is we have been cut off, and then we've started being subservient to the Western knowledge. And the third is a contempt to our own identity and our own self and our own knowledge. The consequences of all this is that we just are disconnected. Most of my friends believe that we are a construct of post 1947. So there is no civilizational DNA that we have anymore. And the purpose of that, what Indic Academy and Indic Book Club is trying to do, is to manifest that DNA, is to unlock the DNA. Its DNA is there, but we are trying to unlock it and manifest it and bring it out, so that you and I are connected to our past. And that is not purely a religious construct. While Aryabhatta might be a Hindu, but the knowledge that he left behind is, we're talking about, which is the scientific knowledge that he has left behind. And I'm not even studying that. Now, Adi Shankaracharya's philosophy, or the spiritual philosophy, or Advaita Vedanta, is now not an integral part of the philosophy departments in our own universities, nor in the Western universities. And why is that? So when we look at certain aspects of our civilizational thought and knowledge, they are knowledge, period. It's knowledge. And it is from an era called the Indic civilization, from that era. So the obvious thing to do, and the obvious attempt that we're trying to do, is trying to bridge, not just bridge. We're just trying to manifest the DNA, to bring it out. Well, I mean, if you can construct it and say that, so therefore there's no reason for me to think that there's a dichotomy between tradition and modern. I am modern and those things are traditional. No. So the oneness that we are trying to see is that cut this artificial barrier between tradition and modern and make people feel their 5,000 years of civilization in their bones. And that's what we're trying to do. And therefore, this is about experiencing and feeling your civilization, that you are one with your past. And you're not looking at it from a microscope as if you're studying something, but you're feeling it. You're one with it. And that is why I think it should be called Indic, and we are all Indics, and therefore we've called it Indic Academy.
Now we talk about the Indic Academy. So now I'll request you to take it away and explain the Indic Academy, what it exactly is going to be, dealing with, and the methodology it is going to adopt.
Yeah. So again, I'm just to get back into the basic mission of Indic Academy, and start from there. So Indic Academy seeks to preserve, protect, and promote what? It seeks to preserve, protect, and promote Indic civilizational thought with Western thought. And that's the purpose of Indic Academy. And the way we are trying to go about doing that is looking at it from three horizons: Horizon 1, Horizon 2, and Horizon 3. And I must thank McKinsey for large part of the way I think and structure my presentations. So if anybody out there who is seeing this chart and saying, "Oh, I can see a McKinsey there," well, yes, there is a McKinsey in me. So the first horizon is, of course, the looking at preservation of study of shastras and protection against distortion. That's the first. I mean, everything that we need to do right now is we should do these two things. We should look at how do we protect the distortions that I talked about in the first podcast from emanating from the academia in the last few decades, and how do we also preserve the shastra study. So this is the key in the first. So the last 2 years after that would be to focus on Indic knowledge systems and ensure that most of the public intellectuals, like I said, these manifesting this civilizational DNA. And the third phase is, of course, promoting Indic knowledge systems globally and to integrate Eastern and Western thought. That's the broad vision of Indic Academy and India, and they teach in their houses to the students studying Vedanta or studying Mimamsa or Vyakarna, any of the traditional knowledge systems, and they all come down to Tenali as semester every semester and write their. Mind you, there are several such institutions in India that need support and that need just to preserve our knowledge systems, which is facing neglect because of lack of funding. So that's one of the things that we are doing. And the second thing is, of course, to nurture scholarship who are fighting these battles. Time when people are looking at getting your engineering and medical exams, and so therefore children are not oriented towards absorbing it. So this should have been integrated and started at a very younger age. Successfully, Michelle is doing the same course in greater depth in IIT Gandhinagar. That has received a phenomenal response. So my view is that this is better at this point. Is better that we reach out to the graduate, undergraduate, or graduate students rather than the CBSE phase. So a technological platform that converts all the Indic civilizational knowledge into a Khan Academy. All been working very hard in the last couple of decades that on the protection kind of pioneering work that Rajiv has done in the protection space. You're already aware, and so now it's a time that we just need to map every distortion that's been there against our identity, and then counter it with research, rigor, and respect by the academics, and finish it off. I mean, protection is just. I mean, you need to approach it on a war footing, a positive zone. At some point, it has to. I mean, you can't keep fighting a battle. At some point in time, you have to win the battle. You have to target winning the Swadeshi Indology and all these efforts that Vishwa has done, Vishwa Adluri and Joydeep have done. They have ripped the German Indologists apart with their book on neuroscience. So there are these individual pools of excellence and activism that's happening. So we need to come together and say, okay, now this is it. Let's put all our resources and finish this damn thing. And then move on to the positive aspects of. I mean, that's really the key. Move on to the positive aspects of inculcating, manifesting that civilizational DNA. That's where we need to. That's where we need to have the vision and look at that. And for that, what we really need to do and look at is building. If you have this Khan Academy kind of a model, and then hopefully at some point in time post 2019, the government of the day would focus on incorporating IKS into the syllabus. So one is, of course, there is this pending thing of distortion of history that's happening. I mean, we still have not clueless. The government is not really enthusiastic about it right now. But if you just look at that as one bucket that has to be done, and one is, distortion of history has to be rectified. So that's one aspect. But that's the stage one. Like I said, that's the protection stage one. That's the cleaning up part. The other part is, if you want to really manifest the civilizational DNA, is to incorporate this as a part of the syllabus, so that this is a part of your being. It becomes a part of your subconsciousness, right? That's the goal. And for that to happen, you have to think of how do you do that at middle school, at senior school, and in the undergraduate, graduate. But more importantly, one of the things that we should look at is also the Indic knowledge systems education executive programs has talked about in terms of liberal arts for managers. So there is a move for the last 15-20 years in management theory saying that, look, we need to incorporate liberal arts into a manager's thinking. His should be just a sales, an MBA finance, MBA marketing or production, or engineers and whatever have you. There has to be some kind of a humanistic approach, and therefore there's a need for humanities and liberal arts into a manager. So there is that trend that's happening. There's another trend parallelly of what Prasad Kaipa is doing in terms of individual DNA, Ken Robinson, the individual DNA of self-discovery and what his core competence is. So there's another trend there. And there's another trend of technology, design thinking, of Apple and Steve Jobs and all that aspects of how you can bring in a human and design element into your life, into everything that you do. You're trying to bring in the design thinking into your life, which is basically the creative and artistic part of into technology. So you see, there are several trends out there that are coalescing together. And then there's another trend of sustainable living, veganism, yoga, meditation, and all that stuff. So there, you see these four tracks that are parallelly, from a manufacturing old economy point of view, from a new economy point of view, from an individual point of view, from the sustainable environmental point of view. So all these tracks are happening. So actually speaking, there is a scope for liberal arts for leaders. There's a scope for liberal arts for an executive program for for leaders, which incorporates all these things. And the Indic civilizational knowledge and thought has a very important role to play, and in bringing this into the mainstream, into the executive thinking. And this is something, a very, very positive way of looking at, when you say sustainable living, I mean, Pancha Mahayagna. I mean, that's my culture. I treat my elders, I pray to my elders, I pray to my ancestors, I pray to my teachers, I pray to my environment, I pray to my fellow living beings. I mean, that's the core of my, and we are just enamored with this Western constructs and Western thoughts. And, that's how it is. But if you actually, make modules and package the IKS into something which is into in a format that you can take it to leaders, to executives, then you're transforming them into all these four different streams. That's what you should envision. That's the vision should be, that we're looking at that kind of a thing. So therefore, this dichotomy between humanities and science and all this will blur. And this holistic thinking and holistic lifestyle, that's a very big trend that we should catch. That trend, we should be the leaders in that space. So if you look at the third phase and look at, I'm telling you, I mean, my friends are fighting a battle on identity in California, and we won that battle. And But believe you me, if I make a module on Ayurveda, yoga, and meditation, I can market it to Cambridge, and we have to think of, yes, there is this protection battle that we need to win, but that's the first part. The second and the eventual part is that how do I look at a global way of incorporating the IKS into all the schools worldwide? I mean, that's the vision. That's how you should think of. And now then look at IKS as a product in Harvard University for leadership, programs as a module. This is possible. This is entirely possible that we can achieve this. But yes, we first need to fight the protection battle. We need to fight the preservation battle in the first phases. But that's the vision, that there would be a program on IKS that people run by. Now he has acknowledged it in his book, but he's been packaged it in a way that's presented out to the Western audience. Look at Deepak Chopra. I mean, he writes a book. I mean, his entire career, he's built it on this is Indic stuff. This is our stuff. You don't want to acknowledge it, fine, but thank you very much. So there is a whole market out there that we need to capture back. And that should be what we should be targeting. So what we are trying to do now, what are my competencies required to achieve this? First and foremost, thanks to Modi, this whole thing of skill development as a concept. So we think I'm a skill development company. So I'm trying to train people into writing. So that's it, or do research like an academic. So I'm a skill development corporation. And then I'm also an incubator. I'm an incubator, I'm an event manager, where basically, because we are nurturing these specialized networks, you have a specialized network who is focused on history. There's some specialized networks who are focused on shastras, a specialized network on economics. So you have these different networks that you are nurturing, you're creating, and you're sort of, it's like a product. And then you also think of like an event manager. I mean, ultimately, at the end of the day, Indic Book Club and Indic Academy, in the last 1 year since we started doing events, 1.5 years, we have done more than 120 physical events all over the world. And effectively, it means logistics. It means hiring the hall, getting the standees printed, getting the ticketing. That's it. It's event management. So you need to build that thing, and venture investing. Ultimately, this is impact investment. It's a venture capital, social impact venture capital company that looks at any proposal that comes to us and thinks of it and saying that, okay, this is social impact investing. How do I invest in this? And what is the impact that this person or this project or this platform that is being created will have on either preservation or protection or promotion of our civilizational thought? So therefore, you need to think of this as to how do you create, how do you attract these proposals, right? And how do you process them, what kind of due diligence you do, and how do you react to them, and how do you raise money and invest in those causes. Then we look at, we don't have resources. We are all lone warriors. I mean, we just don't have we don't have the same resources. We don't have a $25 million check being written by somebody, right? So we have to be smart. This is Indic Jugaad. I mean, this is like innovation with limited resources. How do we do that? Now, first and foremost, what is the existing resources? We have existing resources of scholars and PhDs and public intellectuals. Now, first, there are a lot of existing scholars. I mean, we are like Johnny come latelys. We have just started this in the last couple of years. There are people who've been fighting this battle, these lonely battles for decades. Now, what do we need to do to help finish their unfinished efforts? So there's a top up. Like, for example, my friend Conrad is writing a book on Buddha, because this whole thing of his Buddha is not a Hindu, all that. So he's writing a comprehensive book on anything you wanted to know about Buddha, talk to me kind of a book. So how do I help him finish that book? So there are, like Rajiv says, that he has 15 books in him, and is a single man. He's working his, butt off trying to save. But ultimately, all that knowledge that he has and the books that he needs to finish, he needs help to finish that, right? How do we help? Similarly with Balagangadhar, similarly with David Foley, similarly with so many scholars, that Madhukishwar, so many of them have unfinished agenda or unfinished work that needs to be helped to finish, help them cross the finishing line. The second thing is to initiate schools of thought. I mean, you have Pollock school of thought, and then he has all his proteges all over. I mean, why shouldn't we have David Foley's school of thought? Why shouldn't we have Rajiv's school of thought, wherein you have a particular nuance or a particular line of thinking that you want to bring to, and therefore we should establish a school of thought. And then we don't have the money to establish a chair. If you want to establish a chair, you have to write a check for $4-5 million, and now that market of establishing chairs also is sort of becoming very difficult. So what do? Jugaad. So we are trying to do stools, like Indic stools versus Indic chairs. What do? I mean, so I'm talking to a couple of universities and saying, look, we will take care of the salary of a scholar for the next 5 years. Can you please allow us to establish a stool in his and we will engage him, and then he can train 5 more PhD students. So therefore, the cost of the salary of that person is what we are going to pay. On the other hand, if you are writing a check to a chair, that's like a $4-5 million check that goes into their endowment, which is a fancy endowment that they already have, and then part of that will go for the salary, and they'll have their 30% of their overall overheads and whatever calculations they come up with. But here, all I'm saying is, what? You already have the infrastructure. I will pay the salary of the scholar for 5 years. Please allow me to have a stool in his name. I'm just saying stool is so that you get a sense of the difference between what a chair means in the US and what we can do with leveraging our existing resources. So I'm not actually going to call it a stool, but I'm just giving you a framework to understand what we need to do here. Then there are several PhDs who have completed PhDs, but because of lack of opportunities, they're actually languishing. So you have PhDs working in teaching Sanskrit in a school in Madurai. This has got nothing to do with the kind of his PhD or the kind of what he has studied, but he's just doing teaching. So you have a lot of existing PhDs in India who are working in the wrong place. Why? Because of lack of opportunities. Now we need to target them, we need to identify them, and then recareer them, because they're bright, and that's an existing resource that is not being utilized. Then, like I mentioned, nurture passionate public intellectuals. Like I was talking about my friends Jijit, Aditi, Nitin, Srinivas. There's several of them who are very, very passionate, who have the potential to become PhDs themselves. And I'm telling you, my sense since the last 3 years, and I'm interacting with several of them, my sense is that there are at least 10,000 such public intellectuals all over who are potential PhD candidates and who can set up. And I must tell you a very interesting model that I came across called KSRI, Kuppuswamy Research Institute in Chennai. Now, this was set up in 1945. It's a trust, like Indian Academy is, right? So now they have a tie-up with Madras University, wherein the scholars are employed by KSRI. So KSRI has 4 scholars right now, and The PhD program is held by KSRI. So the 4 scholars are, they can take up to 8 students. They probably have 6 students each. So they have 24 students. And the final dissertation and the final certification, the final certificate that's given is by the Madras University. This is an MOU. So we are trying to explore that with Chinmaya and other universities to see whether Indic Academy can do the same and have scholars on our payroll and have the PhD students who are doing their PhD with them, but the final dissertation is done by and the certificate is given by a university. Because setting up a university, Chinmaya University, the corpus is 25 crores, and they have a big campus and also setting up a university is a 150 crore kind of a minimum budget. So we don't have that kind of money. So how do we now nurture scholarship? And so therefore tying up with other universities and getting it on. But there are these problems of HRD rules, and professors have to retire, so you can't take professors who are retiring, and most of our knowledge is with professors who are more than 60 plus. So you have all those things, and if you want to do PhD, then you have to be a resident of Chennai. That kind of crappy regulations are there which we need to overcome. But the larger point is that scholarship can be nurtured through innovative
Just
ways.
mentioned the HRD department's the fantastic role that it plays in making sure that wherever we try to do something, they make sure that we don't do it. And so, what is the long term plan of actually how does the Indic Academy and the Indic Book Club actually deal with this, giant socialist structure that we have created? Because it can't be said ki, if we keep shouting that, oh, hamare ko to problem ho rahi hai. Obviously, we all know we have a problem. And how are we going to go about identifying a problem and actually bypassing this? So have you guys given that a thought?
Right now, I'm working around it because of the limited resources that we have. A simple thing like IKS may not be, may not still be offered as an option in by the HRD department. So therefore, the rot is very deep. I mean, it's a deeper problem that we have in the government, the bureaucracy, and the academia. So it'll take some time to sort of unfreeze that aspect. So we really have to work in the next few years around that.
And yeah, to all the BJP fanboys, they don't help either.
Sorry, I missed you.
So the message was for all the BJP fanboys. I mean, I'm also a BJP voter, but yeah, I'm not a fanboy. So to the ones who think, oh, BJP se acha kuch nahi hai. By the way, yeah, see what's happening in the academia. You'll get the answer.
Yeah, I think, like I said, this government, I think, is right now focused on political domination rather than anything else. So I think, everybody's hoping the 2019 and all that. I am less sanguine about it. I think whatever initiatives that we do, the only reason I would approach this government for anything would be to remove these crappy laws of retirement. See, most of the scholars that I know are definitely 65 plus. I mean, 62, 65, and I think before they die, they have the scope to at least nurture 8 more scholars, and I want to do that, and I want to ensure that they nurture 8 more scholars. But this crappy stuff is out there, and you need to. I don't know. I mean, that's the only thing I would want to reach out to this government. Otherwise, it's best to stay out and work around your own limited resources. Yeah. So these regulations are drafted, and you to change the regulations and all that, they have to think through so many aspects. But yeah, so the other thing is that to actively seek collaborations. Now that this is again an important aspect. If you remember the 1980s, when the Japanese companies they first came in, and the keiritsu was a big concept that these companies had small shareholding in each other, they had representation and all that. So they was like coming together. So we need to build an indie keiritsu wherein the cross nominees on the board, or working together. That's the way we can make a better impact given our limited resources. So therefore, we should be able to offer either financial or the brand or the physical infrastructure or the certification support. Like I was telling you about KSRI, Madras University offers the certification support, right? Now, I am seeking the certification support of other universities in India. Now, I don't have infrastructure. I'm just a, online platform. I don't have physical infrastructure. So I'm seeking, if I need to do a workshop, I'll go to MIT Institute of Vedic Sciences, I'll go to Chinmaya, I'll go to some other place to do. So that's the infrastructure. Or I need, because I don't have a brand, if I need a brand, then I will say, okay, let's partner with each other. Or if somebody needs sponsorship, then we need to offer each other financial support. So that's the thing, that we have to pursue this in collaboration. This has to be in collaboration. This can't be one without collaborations. Lastly, what's the so important, what's the output of all these things? What's the actual product or service that we want to offer, right? So grants, programs, events, and publications. So that's the 4 products that we, as an offering. And in grants, we offer grants to students, to scholars, and also to platforms. So any person who has a platform like digitization of manuscripts or any documentation, all these things are platforms. So the way we look at them is as platform, and therefore funding that platform, or a scholar for his research, for his travel, for his attending a conference. So whatever be that purpose be, and then to students for their education. So that's the thing is, we want to do this in a transparent process, and also do a crowdfunding platform. So therefore, within Indic Academy, this would be a separate Indic activist network, or a network of Indic activists, a separate platform wherein we would contribute, mentor, and then promote these things. So some of these ideas we would be physically doing the due diligence and investing, and then raising money from third parties. So using technology to raise money. So that's the part. Then my friends Surendranath, DV Sridharan, and Yogini, Nupur, Dimple, Srinivas, all these people are trying to work towards Pramod, in fact, is offering his technology for crowdfunding. So we're trying to design this process. Then the thing is to offer online and offline courses. So we did workshops on Mahabharata by Vishwar Luri and Joydeep, which received some phenomenal response both in Bangalore and Delhi. We've already done some online courses on Sanskrit, and idea is to introduce a Indic Fellows program, wherein through a 1-year course, 1-year time, we sort of transform that person into to eventually take up a PhD. So make him go through workshops and mentoring, all the things that I was talking about in Indic Book Club. We want to do this as a 1-year time frame, wherein there's an online, offline mentorship, training, research, and fellowship kind of a support. So we're working on this. Then we have an associate called American Academy of Indic Studies that we have established. So that's something where we that's focused on the American academia, and therefore there we are trying to do an annual conference there next year, and that's the thing. And so you have 3 large conferences. So you have a conference in the US ones, Europe ones, and then India. And then you have smaller thematic, like the workshops that we did on Mahabharata. So we have these mini thematic. We are doing a workshop on Bhagavatam in Bangalore with my friend Vijayalakshmi. Um, so therefore, that's so think of it as larger events and smaller events, and that's what we're trying to do. And ultimately, we need to also nurture publications. There's some expensive work. We're trying to get access to these publications and make it open access so that larger audience can access them. So this is a broad framework. Most of these things that I have outlined are so when we started this in 3 years ago, 2.5 years ago, it's not like as if so much of clarity was there. So first there's cloud and then only there's clarity. It's like an internet startup. So this is like an indie startup. So you just say, okay, you want to do something, and then the strategy keeps being fine tuned, and you're getting sharpened and based on your experience. So only when you go out into the market and then you reach out to people and then you reach out. So my friend Srinivas, he has traveled to more than 8 universities in India and met everybody and understood what's happening. And so this is all coming from actual experience of what's happening in the market out there and what's required, and then and trying to also come from our own stance in terms of what is the competencies that we can bring. The basic idea is to bring an entrepreneurial spirit, an entrepreneurial energy into this endeavor, and an entrepreneurial thinking of a transformation that can happen here in our lifetime. And that's what basically distinguishes Indic Academy and Indic Club from other efforts. That's the thing.
Okay, I have a question. You mentioned the crowdfunding, crowdfunding aspect. Now, it could be a question and a query and a suggestion, all combined together. Now, in my personal experience of whatever I have dealt with at a social and political activism level in the last few years has been a lot of people find it very hard to shell out funds in huge chunks in a single amount of time. But like, at least I'm observing this in America now. They have patreon.com, where Patreon has this system where if you like someone's content or you like someone's ideas, you can support them by giving them small amounts of money on a monthly basis. Like, they have options of $1 to $5,000, whatever you want to pay, but on a monthly basis. So my suggestion, or my question, you can take it as a question and a suggestion both, is that when the Indic Academy sets up its crowdsourcing or funding options, uh, do they have something like this in mind?
Yeah, yeah, yeah. In fact, you're absolutely right. This is the periodic payments, and if you want to achieve scale, I mean, this is how you should do it. I mean, that's the using technology to enable a customized solution even from a donor's perspective. That's what will happen.
That's a good thing, because I mean, this has at least been my experience. A lot of times, many people can't donate a lot together, but if they get the option of, say, there might be people who might be willing to give 500 rupees a month,
Yeah,
say, and 500 rupees a month, if you take it for 12 months, becomes a substantial amount as a donation. And if
absolutely,
you are able to create a network of 10,000 people who are willing to give 500 rupees a month, that's a significant amount of money then, on a yearly basis.
absolutely, absolutely. And it is
So
donate as you earn kind of a thing. So it's pay as you earn. So
yeah, it's voluntary, and you can stop whenever you want to, and you can start whenever you want to. So, I mean, see, I personally like a few podcasts, so I actually give a monthly voluntary monetary amount to
mhm.
podcasts, and I find it very interesting. Like, they don't they are very clear. If you like my content, you pay me whatever you want to pay me out of your own free will. There's no compulsion. And I mean, it's just amazing how many people actually pay those podcasts. And the kind of quality content that they are able to generate after that, because their production quality is fantastic, and their the guests are fantastic, the topics they pick up are fantastic. So if actually we, the Indic Book Club and the Indic Academy, actually, yeah, there's a lot of things, because even in your presentations, you have mentioned the integration of the East and the West. And I believe we can definitely learn a lot of things from the West while we fit them into our Eastern models. And what I have noticed is there are some things out there which we can learn a lot from them. And I think this was something very interesting. The patreon.com concept of monthly voluntary donations was fascinating.
Yeah.
I mean, I liked it, and I've been recommending this to everyone. In fact, I'm going to start supporting. Like, I've been telling Op India to start this, but Op India does not. Rahul, if you listen to this, shame on you. You're not listening to me.
On the
So,
integration of East and West, I just want to tell you a small incident that has recently happened. I mean, small uh, moment of epiphany also. I was reading this book called The Liberal Art of Investing. And in one of the chapters on reading and literature, the author talks about this school called liberal arts college called St. John's College. And
mhm.
this is a very interesting thing. And after this podcast, I would urge you to look at that website. It's sjc.edu. And when I read about that, my hair was, it was just, I was so overwhelmed with that concept. So my son is studying in a liberal arts college himself. And this liberal arts college is so unique that they have this program called the Great Books of the Western Civilization program. And 4 years undergraduate program, they only study the great books of Western civilization. So there's no majors, there's no minors, there's no economics, there's no computer science, nothing. Every student studies the same thing. It's a 4-year program, and it's called the Great Books of Western Civilization. So they go back to the basics. They will study Plato, they'll study Socrates, they'll study Archimedes from the original text. And then they will progress to the contemporary as they move on. They study the music like that, everything. And there, so
It's
there was
actually quite fascinating.
very fascinating. And I'm telling you, and there was an article on the website from Quartz, and then they was talking about more than 35% of the students end up as PhD, uh, academics. And I was so impressed with this that when I went to the US recently, I made it a point to go to Washington, and I spent a day there in SJC, because it's a completely mind-boggling thought. There's no other college like this. And then I said, look, they also have a master's in Western, they have a master's program, and they have in the master's, they have a master's in Eastern classics. So now I I said, look, at some point in time, I hope a day will come that you talk about great books of civilization, not great books of Western civilization. This whole construct of Western and Eastern has to go. And you look at education from a chronological point of view, from a civilizational chronological point of view, and you read Shankara and you read Buddha integrated after you finish reading Socrates and Plato. That's how education has to be. So just imagine, just think about this construct of great books of civilization, and you have a program, an undergrad program, which teaches you to integrate Eastern and Western education into one stream of education. That's when this kind of condescending attitude towards this mystical, this Oriental stuff, all that will go. That's the day when you and I will be equal, because you have not separated me and read me separately as a curiosity that you need to be satisfied. You've read me because I'm a part of the civilization that you and I are apart from. Right? So this is what we need to do. This is the goal that we should have. And I'm telling you, just look at that SJC program. It's just mind-boggling. And I spent the whole day there, and I was completely, it's just a very humbling experience of actually going to,
You know,
yeah.
I couldn't agree more with you because I mean I was someone who actually never read Western civilization or Western basis of how Western thought was found. I read Indian civilization and the Indian darshanas, but then eventually I was like I have to read what Plato had to say, or Socrates, or they have this pre-Socratic thinking and post-Socratic thinking, or
Mhm.
that's how they've divided it. So when I actually started reading a lot of their stuff, I found a lot of similarity also in the thinking, and then it got me even more curious. And then in fact I read this very interesting book, and I would recommend this book. That it's a big book, but the listeners, if they can, they should read. It is called The Shape of Ancient Thought. I keep forgetting the name of the damn author. I think it was Machiavelli, I can't remember the name, but the book's name was the author's name I can't remember, but the book's name is The Shape of Ancient Thought. And it talks about how Eastern thought actually influenced Western thought, as in Greek thought, and how some aspects of the Greek thought have actually influenced our thought. So I mean, it was not a one-way street; it was a two-way street. And how this this shastrarth, or this manthan between our civilizations, has created and enriched both of us. And in fact I always believe, like, in fact I tell everyone that you take the best out of everyone and then you upgrade yourself. I mean, that's how we are supposed to be, right?
Absolutely. Absolutely. So yeah, so that's
Yeah.
a very interesting thing. I would urge you to visit that, and I'll send you some material. Uh, and it's very nice.
Oh, definitely. I'm always up for these kinds of things. I like reading, and I like to upgrade my knowledge base as much as I can. I mean, I'm a sucker for knowledge. So anything that comes and that helps me become a better person and a better human being, I'm always up for it. So please do.
Great.
So, I guess now we've covered up everything. So a little bit of a message from my end to the listeners. This one was a longer podcast. I usually try to finish it off in 1 hour, but I we needed a little bit of an extra time to explain both the organizations and their structure. uh, I would urge everyone who listens to this podcast to at least listen to it twice. I know you will be like pagal ho gaya kya, but I really mean it. Listen to this podcast twice. Try to understand what Hari Kiran ji is trying to achieve. Pay attention to the kind of detail he's gotten into. See how he goes into explaining everything, how he connects the dots. He explains the importance of everything. Not only should you support this initiative, but you should use Hari Kiran ji as a model of how to do things. See how he goes about systematically. आप अपनी जिंदगी की कोई भी चीज कर रहे होगे, आपको ऐसे ही करनी चाहिए. आप you might be an entrepreneur, you might be someone who's into, say, music. I mean, I am a part-time drummer, so there is a method, and there is a lot of effort that is involved when you go about developing anything, any product in your personal life or your professional life. And Harikiran ji, I have to commend you. I mean, the way you have made these presentations in our three-part series, the amount of effort you have put in, and you at least agreed to come and speak. I know you were very reluctant. I mean, I have been behind your ass, pushing you all the time ki aao meri podcast pe, aao meri podcast pe, and you were very reluctant initially. But I'm really glad you have done this three-part series, because and I have learned a lot from this. In fact, the way you make your presentations has taught me a lot. I mean, it has made me a better person, so thanks a lot for this.
Thank you. I must thank you because it actually forced me into articulating everything because I needed to do it in 4 slides. So present the problem, present the individual, and present the platform in 4 slides. So it made me put everything together. And more than that, it gave me an opportunity to talk about what has been happening in the last 3 years. Yes, I was reluctant. So this is sort of my coming out of the closet movement, and reaching out to the listeners and telling them what exactly is happening, what needs to be done. I am actively looking for support and resources from various platforms. And I mean, I wouldn't have done it if you hadn't pushed me. So I must thank you so much for that.
No, I'm always there to push people. That's all my job is. मैं धक्का लगाने का काम करता हूँ.
Yeah.
So thanks a lot, sir, and I hope that the Indic Academy and the Indic Book Club comes up with even bigger and better things. Thanks a lot.
Thank you. Bye bye.
Bye.